Chugwater Studios presents How to Sell the World, the stone-hearted story of Greyson Grim. Written and narrated by Matt van Rensburg. Chapter 1. Greyson Grim. It was an ordinary day for Greyson. He woke up, made his bed, and headed down to the kitchen for breakfast. He poured himself a cup of rude to my sister coffee, adding 2 teaspoons of not very nice sugar and a drop of being bad milk. This was an ordinary day for Greyson, but Greyson was no ordinary man. Greyson Grim had a very important job, one he had done for as long as he could remember. The world had been sold to him when he was just a boy, and before him, someone else had carried it too. That was how the world worked. Someone always had to take care of it. And now it was his turn. His job was to make sure there weren't too many bad Thingamajigs in the world. Well, how does he do that, you ask? I guess we first have to find out what a Thingamajig is. Every time someone has an argument, or they're not very nice, bad Thingamajigs start to appear like clouds of dust or smoke. We can't see them, but they're there, and they're not good for us. They make us feel angry and grumpy. According to the Great Big Book of Bad Thingamajigs and Stuff, an owner's guide to how to look after and sell the world, the only way to get rid of the bad Thingamajigs is to eat them. Yes, that's right, eat them. It clearly says on page 702 that every person's bad Thingamajigs have their own particular flavor. This means that the owner of the world knows exactly which people are not being polite or kind to others. You could say it was like eating Santa's naughty list. Of course, it was up to the owner of the world to decide how to eat them, but they have to go. The book also recommends using lots of ketchup or chocolate spread, as eating bad Thingamajigs is unpleasant. The naughtier you are, the more disgusting they taste. And worst of all, it comes at a huge cost. Each bite that the owner took made his or her heart grow a little heavier and a little harder as it slowly turned to stone. But someone had to do it. Chapter 2. The Buttery Towers. Greyson lived in a big yellow mansion called the Buttery Towers. Set high on a hill in the clouds, Buttery Towers looked like 2 giant sticks of golden butter stretching towards the sky. Far away from everyone, it glowed warmly in the sunlight. At night, the lit lanterns made its windows sparkle like stars, twinkling above the world below. On top of the roof was a snoozer, a contraption that Greyson had designed and built when he first moved in. It worked like a vacuum cleaner. You pressed a big red button on the wall in the kitchen, and the snoozer started sucking bad Thingamajigs into the roof. It would then process and deliver newly transformed food and snacks to the required stations. Fridge, deep freeze, bread tin, coffee machine, cookie jar, fruit basket, heck, even the tap water had Thingamajigs. It was going to be another busy day for Greyson. I'd better have lots to eat for breakfast, he thought to himself, adding another 2 pieces of lying to my parents about doing my homework bacon to his plate of stealing sweets from the store scrambled eggs. Chapter 3. Purest of Hearts. The other part of Greyson's job was to find the right person to take over when he was gone. Unbeknownst to anyone in the normal world, the world was actually looked after by one person at a time. That person had a huge responsibility. Any person who was selected to be the owner of the world had to have the purest of hearts. That way, the person would be able to own the world for much longer before their heart turned to stone. As it reads in the great big book of bad thingamajigs and stuff, an owner's guide to how to look after and sell the world, on page 16, 3 sentences below the mustard stain, the owner of the world must do anything and everything possible to sell the world to the purest of heart. It also said to use all the tricks in the book, as finding this kind of heart is almost impossible. In fact, you most likely would never find a second one. There simply weren't many of them around. But Greyson had had his eye on someone for quite some time now. This boy was very special indeed. Greyson knew exactly who was naughty, which was just about everyone attending Chugwater Primary School, with the exception of an 8-year-old orphan boy named Tobi Taddlewink. That morning, he was walking alongside Tobi, just outside of school. Greyson was using his invisible powers, so nobody could see him. Of course, one benefit of the huge responsibility on his shoulders was he got to use magic whenever he wanted. Things were about to get a bit tricky as Greyson saw trouble heading their way. "Oops, your book seemed to bump into my hand again," said a grinning voice, as all of Tobi's homework went tumbling to the floor. As usual, it was Kelly, the school bully. He was bigger and much hairier than most of the other kids at his school. He always said, "Grade 3 was the best 4 years of my life." Greyson knew exactly who he was. He had eaten more than his fair share of Kelly's bad thingamajig tuna sandwiches, banana bread, and biscuits. And Greyson disliked eating Kelly's sticking out your tongue to a teacher pies the most of all. They tasted like boiled cabbage. Kelly didn't enjoy learning or studying. He didn't like playing sports or even playing with kids. He preferred being rude to some kids and making fun of other kids. He would always steal food at lunchtime. "Burp! I love chocolate milk, but I'd prefer it cold next time." He would always yell at Nelson, the boy who always brought chocolate milk to school. Tobi simply ignored Kelly. It was a daily routine that he had become used to. He picked up his books and walked away. Greyson was smiling from ear to ear. His thumb and index finger went back and forth like windscreen wipers on his chin. "Now that's a pure heart," he pointed. "That's exactly the type of person who I need to sell the world to." Kelly spun around as Tobi walked past. His nostrils were flaring like someone had just farted. He took a step forward, ready to push Tobi, when suddenly Greyson snapped his fingers. Kelly's shoelaces were instantly tied together. "Whoa!" He tripped over his feet and went crashing to the floor. Kelly sat up whimpering. "Hey, who did that?" he said, whilst trying his best to hide his red cheeks. "I guess you're never too old to believe in magic," Tobi thought to himself while staring in disbelief. The bell rang. It was time for class. Chapter 4. World for Sale. After school, Tobi was making his usual walk back to the orphanage. As he cut through the park, he suddenly saw something he'd never seen before. He wasn't sure if it was a lemonade stand or maybe someone selling tickets to the zoo. As he grew closer, the sign above the table, decorated with light bulbs and neon writing, started shining brighter and more colorful with each step closer he took. The sign read, "World for Sale." Tobi chuckled to himself. "What on earth is going on here?" he thought. The strange thing was that nobody else in the park seemed to notice. People just walked past without blinking an eye. There was a man standing behind the counter, rummaging through boxes, looking very busy. Toby approached the counter and felt rather silly for asking, but he simply couldn't resist. "Excuse me, sir." The words gently tumbled out of his mouth. The very busy man didn't even look up. He carried on counting and calculating, quietly talking to himself. 7/8 in Bangkok, Manhattan only needs a quarter, 6 and then 5 too. Toby's attempt to gain his attention had failed. Of course. What was he thinking? Why would a man who was selling the world want to waste his time with him? Toby sighed a deep breath and turned back to the path which would lead him home. "Have you brought any money?" he heard an old wise voice ask. "Excuse me?" replied Toby, as he turned his head back to the counter. "Money for what?" he asked. The man only grinned and pointed up to the sign. "The world," Toby whispered. "Greyson Grim," said the old man, holding out his hand politely. Toby shook his hand with a big smile. I'm Toby," he said. He couldn't believe it. Someone had just asked him if he wanted to buy the world. "But I don't have any money," he replied, suddenly remembering he was still a boy. "It doesn't work like that. You can't pay for it with money," said Greyson. Chapter 5. Cobble Walk Lane. You see, many moons ago, Greyson was once a pure-hearted boy just like Toby. He grew up in the small village of Pinecrest and lived with his mother and father at 3 Cobble Walk Lane. His home was a beautifully old crooked cottage that lay right behind Ratchet Creek. The sight often reminded passers-by of a hunched-over princess lifting her dress to keep it from the cold stream below. His father, Mason Grim, was an inventor, a dream big and never stop making plans kind of man. He carried 3 pencils in his apron pocket, always making sure that one was worn down and in need of sharpening, just in case he was bored or needed something else to do. It is believed that he invented the first hydroelectric power station, which he constructed on Ratchet Creek. However, there was one problem. Lord Carl Coppius von Cat, the spoiled brat son of the wealthy von Cat family. This wannabe inventor lived next to Golden Stream Creek and had a hydroelectric power station of his own, although his was built just after Mason's. Lord Von Cat insisted that it had been his idea first. He stole many ideas, and in case you were wondering, yes, this is where the term copycat originated from. But that's a whole different story. Greyson's mother, Agnes, was probably one of the kindest and loveliest mothers to have ever lived. She was short, slightly fuller and robust. It was as if her body had trouble containing all the love trying to burst out of it. Mason Grim was the inventor, but Agnes Grim did everything else. She was a firm but fair kind of woman, and unusually strong for her size. Even though Greyson idolized his father, he would always be a mommy's boy at heart. Greyson's whole life changed on that one afternoon in early spring. He was busy installing the floorboards on the treehouse he was building in Pinecrest Forest. If his measurements were correct, he had managed to get his foundation about 3 doors high. He was just about to hammer another nail into a hard pine plank when he heard the sound of someone whistling. You know, don't you? The kind of innocent whistle someone makes when they pretend like nothing's wrong. Greyson turned his head to see who it was. He saw an old man, half crumpled over, staring at him. His shape could only be described as a question mark asking a question. The old man introduced himself as Richard Ricky Richter. He wore a thick leather overcoat lined with sheepskin. He explained that he was an adventurer who came from lands far away. He was on a mission to find a very important person. "And that person happens to be you," said the deep, raspy voice of a wise man who had lived a long, hard life. Richard continued, saying that he was the owner of the world. He had a special book which granted him almost limitless magical powers. "The book really wants you to sail the world," he said with a slight chuckle, like he was thinking back to mischievous times with an old friend. He snapped his fingers, and in an instant the old man was sitting in the treehouse opposite from Greyson. The treehouse was completely finished with a roof, wooden walls, windows, and a rope ladder. The two of them were sitting on chairs facing each other. Greyson's jaw dropped in amazement, his mouth hanging open like a grandpa napping in his favourite chair. Richard's shaky old hand reached into his coat's inner pocket, pulling out a thin, rectangular, leather-bound book the size of a pack of cards. It had fine golden print which read "The Great Big Book of Bad Thingamajigs" written across the weathered cover, and below it someone had carved out the words "and stuff." The book, whose beginnings are still unknown, is believed to have a wicked past. Nobody really knows where it came from or how it got here. But rumour has it that the person who first enchanted this leather-bound journal might not have been very nice. The only thing we do know is that in the centre of the first page, right under the part where it says "This book belongs to," the name is Gideon something. The last name was scribbled over with what could only have been a magic marker. Those spells are almost impossible to get out. Ah, yes, this book. Thousands upon thousands of pages, each one filled with all the magic, knowledge and power that you will ever need to keep the world in balance. But, Richard paused, lowering his voice to a whisper, that balance can only be kept if you rid the world of as many bad thingamajigs as possible. There are notes, tips, and stuff written in this book from every person who ever owned the world. Keep it close to you, he said with a sense of urgency. Now, looking directly into Greyson's eyes, the fate of the world rests on your shoulders. Well, actually in your heart, but you know what I mean. His voice sounding more sinister now, but with a hint of relief. He snapped his fingers, and a very old-looking scroll and bamboo reed pen appeared in Greyson's left and right hand. "I just need you to sign here," he said, unrolling the light brown scroll and pointing proudly to the bottom of the line, as if he had found something in a Where's Waldo book. Greyson, without hesitation, scribbled his signature on the page, muttering the words, "Mom always said that I should help others." There was something so purely naive about the way he trusted everyone, even the grumpiest of grown-ups like Richard Ricky Richter. Greyson gave his head a shake, as if he was trying to rid himself of the dust of a memory that felt older than the Egyptian pyramids. His eyes regained focus as he continued to explain the whole deal to Tobi. He described all the magic powers he would have, and all the cool things you could do when you own the world. He told him about the job, the bad thingamajigs, and how he had to look after the world. He also told him about the stone heart, and how he would eventually have to find someone to replace him after 1,000 years. 1,000 years? Tobi repeated back in disbelief. This was a lot to take in. But Tobi was a smart boy. Greyson knew that, but he hadn't realized just how smart Tobi actually was. "Okay, but I want 3 wishes before I'm going to sign the contract," said Tobi, not really believing what Greyson said, but trying his luck anyway. Greyson agreed, though he wasn't happy about this. He hadn't gotten any wishes before he signed his contract. Perhaps he should have asked. Chapter 6. 3 Wishes. Tobi's first wish was to go for some ice cream at Giovanni's Gelato. They ordered a super sundae. It had 10 different scoops, strawberry slam, double fudge chocolate, lemon twist, and angel blue with just a few of the flavors resting in their bowl. Then came the toppings, sliced banana, bits of crispy wafer, and roasted nuts, all covered in a blanket of whipped cream and caramel sauce. "I think this will all have melted by the time I've finished 2 scoops," Tobi said, suddenly wondering if he had ordered too much. "Our super sundaes are always served in a refrigerated bowl. Take your time, it won't melt," Giovanni exclaimed from behind the counter. His curled-up moustache moved like a strong man, showing off his muscles. Tobi and Greyson looked at each other and laughed as they slammed their spoons together and began eating. It took them 4 hours to eat it all. They had to take breaks in between, playing games and joking around. They even ended up having an ice cream fight, and Greyson somehow ended up with a wafer stuck on his nose. They both had a wonderful afternoon. As they were saying goodbye, Greyson coughed, and a little sand-like dust fell from his mouth. He frowned, wondering what that could mean. "Perhaps I had some wafer stuck in my throat," he quickly said. Tobi didn't comment, but shrugged as he walked away. "I'll see you tomorrow after school, Greyson. We're going to the zoo for my second wish." "Wait, the zoo?" Greyson asked. But it was too late. You have to understand that after many years of his heart turning to stone, Greyson wasn't a big fan of fun. He knew he had to sell the world to someone, and he knew that someone still had 2 wishes left. Tomorrow, Greyson would go to the zoo. Chapter 7. Bag of Peanuts. The next day was perfect. A bright and sunny afternoon. The birds were chirping about yesterday's pool party, and some bees were humming like a choir in church. "We should visit the gift shop first, just in case we need to leave in a hurry," suggested Greyson, with a mischievous look on his face. He had a plan. He had put up with the ice cream, but there was no way he was spending the whole afternoon at the zoo. Tobi grabbed an extra-large cardboard map of the zoo, which came in one of those sturdy protective tubes you could sling over your shoulder. It made him feel like a jungle explorer heading into the wild. And since Greyson was paying, he grabbed a bag of peanuts for the monkeys. "They don't actually like being fed, you know," Greyson said. He did not want to spend another penny on anything remotely fun, as he didn't plan on being at the zoo for very long. He had plans of his own. "Sure they do," replied Tobi, eager to show Greyson the aquarium section. As they walked past a group of monkeys, Greyson smirked and snapped his fingers. Suddenly, 2 monkeys each had a bag of peanuts in their hands. Not a second later, the first peanut was fired and hit Tobi on the back of the head. "Ouch!" he replied. Then the second peanut hit his shoulder. "What is going on here?" Greyson said sarcastically. He knew very well what was going on here. Tobi turned around and spotted the monkeys with their ammunition. He quickly raised his map tube like a bat to protect himself. The peanut flew straight at him. Bam! His bat connected perfectly, sending it sky high. It was as if everything went in slow motion. The monkeys stared at each other for a split second, their mouths gaping. A little monkey, swinging in a tree, launched himself over the others and caught the peanut in his mouth. He raised his arms in victory, enjoying the crispy shell and the crunchy nuts inside. They all turned to look at Tobi with keen eyes. It reminded him of the bully Kelly, though the monkeys weren't quite as hairy. Another peanut flew, and Tobi whacked it back. A lazy old monkey got lucky this time. Wave after wave of peanuts followed, and Greyson even made his own bat magically appear to help Tobi. People gathered round, laughing and cheering. After visiting as many animals as they could, including the aquarium, it was time to say goodbye. "I told you monkeys like being fed," Tobi proudly said. Greyson laughed at the thought of monkeys giving each other high fives. He suddenly started to cough again, and what looked like bits of sand and pebbles came shooting out of his mouth. "I guess I still had some peanuts stuck in my throat," he said, slightly confused. "Tomorrow's my final wish, Greyson. It's Saturday, so we're going to the beach." "Wait, the beach?" Greyson replied, sounding desperate. If there was anything Greyson hated more than the zoo, it was the beach. The happy faces, the sand getting into everything, and, of course, those horrid seagulls constantly begging for a bite of your sandwich. Chapter 8. The Beach. Greyson woke up the next day feeling surprisingly good. He hadn't felt this way in ages. The more he thought about it, he realized that he was actually feeling great. "I must be excited to finally be selling the world," he thought as he packed his bags. Towel, check. Extra strong sunscreen, check. Water, check. Snacks, check. Contract, check, check. His mom always said to double-check the important stuff. It was a beautiful day, and the beach was full of people. Everyone was trying to find their place for their towels and umbrellas. Adults competed in the usual "I'm redder than you" contest, and children ran around like it was their parents' day off. The ocean tide gently reached out to the shoreline, as if trying to grab the human hot dogs and cocktails covering the sand. "Let's set up camp here, Greyson," Tobi said as he lowered his heavy bag to the sand. "How much stuff did you bring?" Greyson asked, his face sour like he had just eaten a lemon. He snapped his fingers and a huge rainbow-colored umbrella popped up. Underneath were padded beach chairs with soda floats in the cup holders, and a cooler box filled with chocolate-spread sandwiches, fruit, and sweets, all on a big, soft picnic blanket. Tobi's eyes lit up. "This is going to be the best day ever!" he cheered. Greyson had other reasons for thinking it would be the best day ever, although he was starting to feel a bit weird and tingly inside, a feeling he hadn't felt since he was a little boy. "Time for some games, Greyson," Tobi said. "I think it's time to sign the contract, Tobi," Greyson suggested with a hint of impatience. "We've only just arrived, Greyson. Fun first," Tobi added joyfully. "Fun, fun, fun. That's all these kids want to do. Just have fun," Greyson muttered to himself. Something in the back of his mind whirred like a clock starting up again after being broken. "All right, then. Let's get this over and done with," he said, sounding like a child finishing his chores. Before he could say anything else, he looked up to see a spinning piece of plastic flying towards his face. He snatched it before it could hit his nose. "What kind of game is this?" he snickered. "It's called a frisbee, Greyson," Tobi laughed. "Throw it back to me," Tobi encouraged. Greyson threw it back, and Tobi caught it as it gently floated above his head. "Nice throw," said Tobi, flinging it back. This time Greyson was ready and caught it behind his back. They both cheered. As the day went on, Greyson and the boy had more and more fun. They built sandcastles that looked like fortresses, played catch, ate lots of ice cream, and, of course, used Greyson's magic powers to ride jet skis. "I love this!" screamed Tobi, racing across the water on a blue jet ski with Greyson grinning ear to ear behind him. The sun slowly began to set. What a day! Greyson felt light and happy, until Tobi turned to him with a sad face. "It's time for me to go home, Greyson. It's getting late." Chapter 9. The Contract. Hearing those words, Greyson coughed one final time. The last few pebbles shot out of his throat in a cloud of dust. It was as if his whole life flashed before his eyes. He was seeing things clearer than he ever had before. He did not want the fun to end. He did not want Tobi to sign the contract. He did not want to leave Tobi. "Have you got the contract, Greyson?" Tobi asked, looking unsure, as if he suddenly realized what he had actually signed up for. Greyson felt a tear run down his cheek, something he hadn't felt in years. It was warm and tasted like the sea he was so deeply staring at. He stumbled over his words. "Contract? What contract? Ah, yes, of course, the contract." Greyson stood on the beach, the salty air brushing his face. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the ocean. He felt something strange inside him, something good. He held the contract in his hands, the paper old and wrinkled. For so long, Greyson had believed he needed to remove the bad Thingamajigs from the world. He spent his days cleaning up the mess from arguments, anger, and hurt feelings. But now, looking at Tobi, he realized something important. It wasn't just about taking away the bad. Something was missing. "Greyson?" Tobi asked softly. "Are you okay?" Greyson looked at the boy, who had shown him more about life in these 3 short days than anyone ever could. I think I understand now, Tobi," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "I thought my job was to fix everything by taking away the bad stuff. But what I've forgotten for so long, is that the real magic happens when we put love and kindness back into the world." Tobi tilted his head. Something in Greyson felt different. "Does this mean that you're not going to sell me the world?" he asked. "No, there must be another way," Greyson said softly. The truth was, he didn't actually know what would happen if he stopped eating bad Thingamajigs. There was only one way to find out. He looked down at the contract in his hands. For a very long time, he had never questioned it. Until now. Chapter 10. A World Filled with Love. He gently turned to Tobi and said, "The world isn't something you can sell. It's something we all share, and it's up to us to make it better." Tobi looked confused for a second. "But how do we do that?" Greyson smiled warmly. "Every time you're kind to someone, or you make them laugh, or help them, you're putting good Thingamajigs into the world. The good Thingamajigs sparkle like a rainbow in the sun. They shimmer and dance like magical yo-yos, each one bringing a little burst of joy and light wherever it goes." They stood together, watching the ocean waves roll in and out. Greyson could feel his heart slowly changing. It wasn't turning to stone anymore. It was starting to warm up. Little by little, he felt alive. The two of them laughed, running down the beach as the sky turned from orange to marshmallow pink. Greyson didn't need to sell the world anymore. He had learned that the best way to take care of it was by spreading love, one small act at a time. And so, Greyson Grim, the man who once believed he had to fix everything by removing the bad, finally understood the truth. The world becomes better not by taking away the bad, but by putting in the good. From that day on, Greyson didn't just look after the world. He filled it with love. And if you ever pay close attention, you might just see Greyson and Tobi laughing somewhere nearby. Because the truth is, the magic isn't in the schnoozers or the contracts. It's in your heart, in every kind word, every smile, every scoop of ice cream, and yes, even every peanut you share. And for a moment, everything felt just right. Unfortunately, not everything in this world is sugar cone ice cream and sunshine. Now you might think that this was the whole story. But things were only beginning to stir. And it was way worse than a Brussels sprout-flavored donut, because somewhere, something had already begun to change, and the town of Chugwater wasn't going to like it. Coming soon, How to Make a Bully, a day in the life of Kelly Dumfield. Kelly Dumfield rules the playground, with pranks, punches, and a personal assistant. Vincent is a genius. He's allergic to almost everything except trouble. But when stolen movie vouchers lead to more mayhem, wild schemes, and one very angry security guard, things go spectacularly wrong. This is the story of how bullies are made and how they just might change. You've been listening to How to Sell the World, the stone-hearted story of Greyson Grim, written and narrated by Matt van Rensburg. Recording and post-production by Hertz Studio Munich. Published by Chugwater Studios. Copyright 2026, Chugwater Studios, all rights reserved.